The sea hides terrible secrets, from insidious phenomena that will kill you in a split second to an unimaginably polluted region. The dangers of the ocean are not to be underestimated. But what unsettling things should we be prepared for on our next diving trip? What's behind these eerie marine secrets, and why can one wrong move cost us our lives? Some time ago, a camera caught a very strange incident. In the clip, we see a crab being pulled into an underwater gas pipe as if by magic. As the crustacean approaches the narrow gap in the pipe, it is caught in an invisible grip and disappears completely inside the pipe. Without knowing it, the sea creature became the victim of a dangerous phenomenon known in diving circles as delta P. In simple terms, this refers to the differential pressure that occurs when water flows from an area of high pressure to an area of lower pressure. If the water is not flowing, there is basically no risk. But there are numerous situations in which the suction of death can occur. These include, for example, opening a valve, starting a pump, or cutting into a cavity. And in fact, this danger doesn't just affect crabs, it also affects humans. In 2015, Luke Seabrook went to the Nova Scotia Power tidal power plant in Annapolis Royal, Canada, to inspect a sluice gate underwater. But the 39-year-old family man was not to survive the routine dive. It was later discovered that the gate was not fully closed, and Luke was trapped by the force of the water. Particularly treacherous. As soon as you realize that you've been caught in such an undertow, it's already too late. You can't see it, and you can't hear it coming. Given the well-known risks of delta P, you might think that safety standards are high and fatalities are rare, but this is not the case. An analysis carried out in 2016 found that delta P is responsible for almost a quarter of all fatal diving accidents, and most of these tragic incidents are due to human error. The actions of the respective companies are therefore sometimes heavily criticized. Safety activists are calling for the industry to use more remote-controlled technologies. This includes, for example, electronic measuring devices to check the water flow, which can detect dangers before someone enters the water. In addition, experts in the field of hydraulics should check diving plans in advance. This dive site is a mass grave. Located on the Egyptian coast of the Red Sea, the Blue Hole can boast two very contradictory titles. On the one hand, it is one of the most popular dive sites in the world, but on the other hand, the Blue Hole is often described as the most dangerous dive site of all. While the actual Blue Hole is a large hole in the reef top that drops vertically 110 meters into the depths in places, it also has a connection to the open sea. This is known as the arch, or the cathedral, due to its characteristic shape. However, diving through this passage is considered extremely dangerous, even among experienced divers. This can only be achieved if you exceed the usual depth limits set by the diving associations. If you want to conquer the cathedral, you should definitely have experience in deep diving and the appropriate equipment with a special breathing mixture. In addition, treacherous and unpredictable currents can occur within the cathedral. Even an unexpected problem is enough to throw the diver off balance and set off a life-threatening chain of events. Fatal diving accidents in the Blue Hole have been recorded statistically since 1997. 130 people had died here by 2011. An estimated 300 people have died here since the start of diving tourism in the early 1980s. The majority of the fatalities are experienced male divers, but only very few of them are recovered afterwards. As the bodies usually sink to the bottom, most of them never leave their wet grave. As a result, the relatives often have no choice but to visit the countless memorial plaques attached to a rock face. Is this the secret of the Bermuda Triangle? Hardly any other sea area is as suspected of being in league with diabolical forces as the infamous Bermuda Triangle. Located between Florida, Puerto Rico, and the eponymous Bermuda, the Devil's Triangle has repeatedly been the scene of mysterious incidents. To all appearances, it seems to swallow up the airplanes and ships that pass through it, as if by magic, and then never spit them out again. One of the best-known missing persons cases is the story of Flight 19. The 5 American bombers and the search plane have been missing for almost 80 years. The same applies to the coal ship USS Cyclops and the passenger plane Star Tiger. But what is the background to these worrying events? Is there an explanation for the mysteries of the Bermuda Triangle that has nothing to do with demonic creatures and dark magic? Yes, there is. A team of researchers from Germany, Japan, and the USA has discovered a gigantic methane ice deposit in the Bermuda Triangle and may have cracked the mystery of the missing ships and planes. Methane hydrate lumps can form on the seabed under pressure from the depths. If pressure and temperature changes occur, the methane escapes from the hydrate chunks and under certain circumstances shoots explosively and in huge quantities towards the water surface. The tiny methane gas bubbles that rise to the surface form a gas-water mixture that has a lower density than normal seawater. If a ship were to sail over this treacherous carpet, it could sink abruptly and disappear into the ocean. This process happens so quickly that the crew on board doesn't even have time to make a distress call. Now, this explanation for the lost ships sounds quite plausible, but what about the case of the airplanes? Does the gas rise up into the sky where it ignites in the engines of the aircraft? Well, yes. This is exactly what the scientists suspect. A radioactively contaminated submarine lies in the Arctic Ocean. On April 7, 1989, every submarine crew's nightmare became a terrible reality. When the Soviet nuclear submarine Komsomolets was at a depth of between 150 and 380 meters, a valve in the high-pressure airline burst, causing the escaping oil to catch fire. Although the crew managed to steer the boat to the surface and largely abandon it, the flames simply could not be contained. After a few hours, the hull broke, and the Komsomolets sank to the bottom of the Barents Sea in the Arctic Ocean. Naturally, this also applied to the two reactors, the uranium and the plutonium on board, which from then on lay dormant in one of the most fish-rich areas in the entire world. Many details of the incident are still unclear, but there are some indications that the Komsomolets fell victim to a faulty design. Around 3 years after the incident, a research vessel discovered countless cracks along the entire Titan pressure hull. Officially, however, no acute danger of radioactive contamination could be detected. Subsequent dives revealed that the seawater had begun to decompose the linings of the nuclear torpedoes, and shortly afterwards it was discovered that plutonium-239 was leaking from the warheads, whereupon the torpedo shaft was sealed. From then on, those responsible also toyed with the idea of salvaging the Komsomolets. However, this undertaking would not only have been extremely costly, but also extremely risky. The hull could have broken during salvage, which is why it was ultimately decided to seal the wreck with a jelly-like mass. Completed in 1996, the hull is intended to provide protection for 20 to 30 years. However, this mark is rapidly approaching its end, but it is not yet known what measures will be taken next. As the small quantities of escaping cesium-137 dilute very quickly, there is currently no risk to sea life or the surrounding population. The toxic testimony of mankind. What do you do with hazardous chemical waste? Right, you simply dump them in the ocean. What at first sounds like a bad joke is actually the sad reality. Many industrial companies have been using the sea as a natural garbage dump for decades. A few years ago, tens of thousands of barrels of waste were discovered off the coast of Los Angeles, particularly sensitive. The discarded substances included so-called DDT, a pesticide that has been used since the 1940s to kill insects. However, as the substance was suspected of being carcinogenic, its use was banned in most industrialized nations in the 1970s. Now the scientists have discovered that the chemical is far more persistent than they thought. The researchers were still able to detect original DDT on the seabed from 70 years ago. In detail, the contamination affects an area larger than San Francisco. Southern California was once the center of American DDT production. Montrose Chemical Corporation in Torrance produced the insecticide in huge quantities. Before Congress imposed a ban, 2,000 barrels of DDT-containing sludge were dumped off the coast every month between the Second World War and the 1980s. Sometimes workers even poked holes in the barrels to make them sink faster. At the end of 2020, the LA Times revealed that the LA coast was once used as a dumping ground for DDT. The investigation that followed revealed more than 25,000 barrels and a total of 100,000 man-made objects. The most recent analysis showed that the most concentrated layer of DDT lies about 6 centimeters deep in the sediment. Trawl nets and cable laying could therefore quickly bring the chemical back to the surface, as could the animals searching for food on the seabed. The substance is already associated with harmful effects on wildlife. For example, the cancer rate in sea lions has increased significantly in recent decades. Want to find out more about the ocean's most terrifying secret soon? Then what are you waiting for? Press subscribe now and never miss an exciting video again.